And we are live, Senators.
All right, good morning, Senate Health and Welfare Committee. It is March 17th, and today we're looking at a number of bills to pass from the committee to the full Senate. And we're going to begin with a proposed amendment from the Education Committee regarding a pre-ed information. And Martine, want to introduce yourself for the record?
Good morning, everybody. I am Martine LaRock-Bulick of Chittenden Central District. Happy to be here this morning. Shall I go ahead and launch right in?
Please, yeah.
Okay,
Just take us,
wonderful.
and we have it right here on our desk.
Right.
It's on our webpage.
Great. So as you all know, the Education Committee was tasked with creating a study for pre-kindergarten education. And I was tasked with being the liaison between the two committees, although frankly, there are three of us here who could have jumped into that role. So happy to present this briefly to everybody. This is the result of a pre-kindergarten education study committee, which is ultimately going to generate a report. And feel free to chime in if you would like to, anytime. There has been talk. Yesterday, there was talk around changing the language from study to drafting committee, because there does seem to be a general sense that a lot of this information already exists, and it's just a question of putting it together and presenting it. So we are still working on that, but for now, it's still called the study committee. The first part of the bill goes through the creation of the committee. There is created the pre-kindergarten education study committee to make recommendations on how to improve and expand accessible, affordable, and high quality pre-kindergarten education. That's the task. The membership, I don't need to go through every line, do I?
No, but I mean, this, the highlights.
There are a variety of stakeholders in the membership of the committee that you can see on the bill. I don't think I need to name them all.
AOE and AHS, and then folks from the education community, it looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and a parent as well.
Okay.
A family representative. Yeah.
Provider.
The powers and duties. So basically, the committee shall examine the delivery of pre-kindergarten education in Vermont and make recommendations for expanding equitable access for all children 3 and 4 years of age in a manner that achieves the best outcomes for children, whether through the current mixed delivery system, the public school system, the private kindergarten system, or a system that allows school districts to contract with private providers. The committee shall also examine and make recommendations on the changes necessary to provide pre-kindergarten education to all children 3 and 4 years of age through the public school system, including a timeline and transition plan for such changes. And in conducting its analysis, the committee shall address the following topics and questions, which may yield distinct recommendations for children that are 3 and 4 years of age. So basically, these are sort of guiding questions and topics that this group should be considering around outcomes and quality, around capacity and demand, around special education, and public school expansion, funding and costs, and oversight. And then there's a section that does talk about what assistance will be needed, the reporting, which will, as of right now, is due on December 1st of 2023. And then the meetings as well. And there is an appropriation for folks to get a stipend for those folks who don't already work for, who aren't already. Good morning, happy birthday, by the way. Yeah.
Happy birthday. I didn't
Yeah.
I know, I
Yeah.
see you.
We didn't see you yesterday.
Bye. So that is what we ended up with. I would say you know, from my point of view, and I can, and folks, please feel free to chime in, but we have identified that we have a problem. The system isn't meeting the needs of everybody, and the desire is really for folks to come together and collaborate and come up with a solution that doesn't just work in pockets of the state and in certain areas, but really delivers the best quality, the most accessible, the most financially sound system that will meet the needs of the most families and communities. So that's what we're hoping for. There are resources out there that exist already. We hope to tap into those. So we will see what this brings. There's a sense that it's going to be difficult to do this work just because of staffing and timing, but we're hoping that we will get something in a timely fashion so that we can act. And ultimately, I do think, as I've mentioned before in the Education Committee, there are myriad ways of educating kids, myriad wonderful ways. There's not just one right way. So we might be presented with multiple options, and we will have to make the hard decisions at the end of the day as to how we want to proceed with pre-K. That's my sense.
Thank you. It's been a lot of work. I know that Beth St. James is here. Beth, did you want to, first we'll ask questions of Senator Gulick, and then we'll go to Beth, maybe.
Sure.
Questions. Senator Harding.
Thank you for all of your work on this and for the other members of the committee who are here.
She did though.
I, am still extremely disappointed that this turned into a study. I think it's a missed opportunity, and that many of the problems we're trying to solve with in the child care bill could be solved more easily through a public school option. However, I appreciate that we're trying to continue to move things forward. As you know, I think that the list of things you're asking them to look into is way too long, but I know that you've tried to narrow it down, so I appreciate that. I would just say your comment at the beginning about changing it to a drafting committee, I would absolutely not do that. These are not legislators. These are outside people. We draft, they don't. They can make recommendations and then we propose bills. So I would not make them think that they have the power to draft a bill. There's another comment I wanted to make, but I think it's going to be difficult for a group this large to tackle all of these questions in the time period, but we'll see. There are a lot of really great stakeholders involved, so hopefully they'll be able to give us something that we can move forward next session.
I appreciate your input. I was passed as liaison, so
yeah. I get it. I'm trying not to shoot the messenger, but you and I have talked a lot, so you know how I feel.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from the ed committee, other ed committee members?
Well versed.
Yeah.
Very good
Well,
job.
thank you. Well done.
very well.
So Beth, I do have a question for you, and it relates to the comment that I know Martine, you sent the note last night about whether there should be a drafting report, and Beth, yeah, come on up. And I do want to say that this represents a lot of work on the part of the Education Committee, but also on the part of Senator Hardy and myself, and working with Senator Gulick and meeting with others on this. So it becomes a real team collaborative process ultimately. So the question I have for you, and this extends also to the education folks. First, at some point, we'll comment on drafting, that word that Senator Hardy's brought up. But the other question that I have is whether or not there could be something about recommendations for implementation. And so that it becomes forward-looking. That's just a question, and that's something that you have to take back to your committee. I don't know whether that's something you want to do or not. We're kind of at the 11th hour, but it's something to think about.
I mean, personally, I don't feel comfortable adding anything else to what's
Okay.
already being done.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. Did you want to comment on the drafting word?
Sure, Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. Senator Hardy stole my thunder a little bit on this.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I did consult with colleagues, including the Director of the Office of Legislative Counsel, and I actually share Senator Hardy's thoughts that the term drafting is really applicable to all of you and the Office of Legislative Counsel. This report does ask for the study committee to include draft legislative language in their charge. That's not an uncommon ask. It is just a recommendation and something for you all in Leg Council to start with the understanding that it would be Leg Council's responsibility to ultimately draft with direction from you. That being said, I do think that using the term drafting committee would not be appropriate, and I don't think anyone I've spoken to is aware of any labeling of a working group like that. However, we can workshop the name. You could call it a task force. You don't even have to use.
Task force, but we're probably at this stage of the game, and there's a lot that will happen the next stage of the game. So.
With my very new eyes as an observer, it does seem as though the words study committee just are a little bit triggering for some folks, and I don't exactly know the history behind that, but I can imagine that it just requires a lot of work. So if there is another word that would be less triggering, that would be wonderful.
So the common words we use is study committee, task force, working group. I have seen you just get rid of all of them and call it a committee. As long as we're kind of staying in those parameters, I think we can, and we don't have, you could get even more creative rather than just calling it the pre-kindergarten education task force or working group. You could, have a more active term if you want to better signal what the working group is doing, access to pre-kindergarten working group, access to pre-kindergarten task force. But I would say working group, task force, or study committee are the most commonly used terms for a group like this.
I just thought of something that I didn't catch until we had this discussion, but there's no facilitator. Who's going to guide the process?
Yeah,
The
Identify.
Secretary of Education
Yeah.
serves as chair, says that. I think study committee, some people have negative connotations with study committee. One, because it sounds like a lot of work, which they are, believe me. And two, because a lot of times things get sent to a study committee that will just die. So I think that doesn't always have to be the case. If you have a good study committee and legislators who are behind the recommendations of the study committee, there aren't legislators on this, so that could be problematic because usually the ones that have legislators are the ones that push things forward. But
That was my point.
the term working group, I think, is probably less triggering and more, but I also, it's late in the game and we have 4
right.
bills to vote
Right,
out, so I yeah, don't so, actually
and
care that much.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. If to change it to working group or task force, can still have, Katie, is this embedded in S56?
It is, it's section 1A.
Okay, and where is it edit wise?
Otherwise, it's page 2. We'd have to make a change to the heading, and I think in paragraph A, and I think after that, Well, it depends what you call it. After that, it's just called the committee. So if you change it to a task force, we'll have to change it throughout.
Yeah, can I
Okay.
make a suggestion, Chair? That we leave it and that if,
Okay.
maybe it can be changed along the way.
Right,
I must say that we have been asked multiple times to add a legislator or two to this group. I just want to put that out there,
Mhm.
so.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I guess, based on what I'm hearing, there is an interest in changing the name that would have to be concurred with in the education committee. And then the possibility of legislators being added. And that would also have to happen in a committee process, but at this point, the Ed committee's done a great deal of work on this, and you've done a good job of coordinating people around it, Senator, really appreciated. So unless I think it's probably at this point, we'll let it go ahead the way it is, unless we hear a hue and cry from the education committee later. So that. And Beth, thank you for being here this morning.
Absolutely, my pleasure. If you need me for anything else,
I think that's it. Yeah,
thank you.
thank you. And thank Katie as well.
Yes.
I know it's been a lot of work, both of you. So Katie, are you ready to dive into the bills that we have in front of us this morning?
Sure.
All right.
Let me join Zoom so I can share documents.
And I've got printed copies that I can grab for everybody.
I would love a printed copy of documents.
Yes, of course, I got one for you all.
Six. We're doing 25 first.
25, all right.
Oh, 25 first?
Yeah, 25, we're gonna go through,
Sure.
and then we're gonna spend a longer period of time on 56.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning, thank you for being here. Do we have this on our webpage, the new one?
You do.
Okay,
Yes.
so we can look at that until Alex gets back in with the printed copy. Oh, and, okay, let's just go, and then I may have a comment about one of the things we were talking about yesterday.
Okay, so Katie McLean, Office of Legislative Counsel. I will share my screen and pull up the latest draft of S25. Here it is, draft 4.1. Great, okay. So I've highlighted the changes in yellow. There were no changes in the first section of the bill since we last looked at this draft yesterday. First section is chemicals and cosmetic and menstrual products. So I'll skip over that for the moment. Thank you. And the next group of sections is the PFAS and textiles, and we spent a bit of time talking about this yesterday. So we have some staggered effective dates that have been added to this latest draft. So this first chapter, PFAS and textiles, would take effect July 1, 2025. You'll notice it does not have the outdoor apparel for severe weather conditions taking effect July 1, 2025. So it's just not written in the language that's taking effect in this July 1, 2025 section. New in this section is the definition of regulated PFAS to mean PFAS that a manufacturer has intentionally added to a product and that have a functional or technical effect in the product, including PFAS components of intentionally added chemicals and PFAS that are intentional breakdown products of an added chemical that also have a functional or technical effect in the product, for the presence of PFAS in a product or product component at or above 100 parts per million as measured in total organic fluorine. Note that 100 parts per million because in a later effective date, that goes down to 50 parts per million. And so, because we've added this definition of what a regulated PFAS means, further down in this chapter, where we're talking about prohibitions on the manufacture, on the sale, distribution, manufacture of textile articles with PFAS, we've added the word regulated before PFAS. So that would mean that we're prohibiting PFAS that are meeting this definition that was added to statute. So my understanding, and you should confirm with your witnesses, was that this, I believe, is language from California, and that this is a compromise language between industry and environmental interest groups. So that is where this language and proposal comes from. Okay, so I keep scrolling down. We have a new section, section 3A, and this takes effect on July 1, 2027. And this is that same definition that we just added of regulated PFAS, but in 2027, it would be amended so that it's 50 ppms instead of 100. And again, that is consistent with the proposal coming out of California. And then page 11, a new section 3B. This is trying to capture our conversation yesterday that the outdoor apparel for severe wet conditions wouldn't apply until July 1, 2028. So at that time, this section would be amended a third time, and we would add on line 14, outdoor apparel for severe wet conditions. And we'd also add a definition on top of page 12 for outdoor apparel for severe wet conditions. And I have a holdover change from last night. So we will not be striking PPE on line 12. I'll get a corrected version.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be extremely problematic, given California's experience in trying to eliminate PFAS and other chemicals from PPE. There are federal requirements, and then there are all different types of PPE, including in the medical community and others. So putting that in would be very difficult. We're following California's lead on this one.
So I'll have to show the whole list of definitions and renumber them. So you'll see that in the next draft.
Okay.
And then our next change is to the report that we discussed yesterday. So in this report, it would come in by November 15th of this year from DEC in consultation with Department of Health, submitting a report to this committee and to Human Services containing recommendations on how to more comprehensively manage PFAS and other toxic chemicals by chemical class across a range of product categories. And then we have updates to our effective dates to take into account sort of this staggered effective dates and the definition section 1691. So first we have the textile language taking effect January 1, 2025. The 50 ppm takes effect July 1, 2027. And then the change of adding outdoor severe wet weather conditions tech apparel is July 1, 2028. Okay. So those are the changes you're seeing. I'm gonna, go ahead.
I just, can I get a clarification on, I'm trying to find in the draft that paragraph that we spent a lot of time on yesterday that did deal with the PPE, and where is it in the draft now?
Yep, it's still there and it's unchanged. It's page 11. Oh, well, it appears twice.
Okay,
So page 11, it appears, and then the first time it appears is, page,
In all the yellow, page.
page
7.
6.
Oh, 6.
Yeah, it's not highlighted because it hasn't
Okay.
changed.
Yeah, after the armed forces.
page 11 and page what?
The 6.
Oh, page 6.
So
It's
6 is
taken
the
out.
first time it's adopted.
And, oh, that's right.
So, and the issue is, that we probably should not take PPE out because of some of the federal requirements for protective equipment. And then the experience that California had in hearing a huge amount of testimony on this. And they decided that it was just all over the place, so they couldn't. And so I'm not thinking this is a place that we can dive into at this point.
Yeah.
It's huge.
I just, there's so many different kinds of PPE and
Yeah.
the kind that we're all so super knowledgeable about this point is, like, look at what Sarah's wearing, like how, what if that had PFAS in it? And it seems like it doesn't need to. And I understand that some of the more high-end, like waterproof stuff needs it, but
There's a lot there. I mean, it goes
it's just a
from
broad category.
It's just, well, that's how it's defined across the board. And if we want to list things, we could do that. But the question is, what are the replacement chemicals, or what do we have that's going to help the PPE that when we take out PFAS?
Yeah.
And that we don't have that yet. So it is complicated, I agree, yeah.
Can I ask another question?
Of course.
The language on page 7, I guess it's not a question for Katie. I just want to get, because I know you're not an expert in chemistry. You're not a chemist.
She's
Um,
getting to be. She
The
is.
first person
She is
that I'm not a
almost a
chemist.
chemist.
But can I just look to my friend in the corner over there? Is this is the way this is being taken care of? Like, is this how California has done it? Is this still, I remember we've had discussions in the past about intentionally added, and manufacturers are like, well, we didn't put it in there. It's not our problem. But through the chemical process of making the thing, PFAS or some toxic chemical gets created, and that's concerning. And this seems to exempt anything that's not intentional, or I suppose 100, or is
Goes down to 50.
as measured in total organic fluorine. Anyway, short question is this okay?
For the record, Lauren Curl with Vermont Conservation Voters. My understanding from talking to people in California was this was very robustly negotiated, and essentially there's challenges. This kind of reflects the reality of the testing that we have available for products. So that's why the amount goes down over time, because the technology is evolving. So we'll be able to detect lower levels. So it's trying to get down to kind of detection limits, and that's what it's reflecting. But we do support it. I think it just kind of reflects the state of the science. I wish we could go further faster to protect health, but I know the environmental groups in California support this bill strongly, and this is consistent with what they have negotiated there, and we support it. Just
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, any other questions for Katie? So I think the issue around PPE, I think putting that language back in makes sense for us.
Yep, I'm
Yeah.
working on it now.
Okay, that'd be good.
It's gonna, okay.
And then I'm looking around the room and there isn't anyone raising his finger. Bill, thank you for being
Just
here.
with Andy, apologies, Madam Chair, also apologies to council. Lack of sleep this week is undermined this question.
No,
Just reading through, it strikes me, because outdoor peril for severe conditions is not explicitly exempted in the initial part of section 3. The section 3 does include outdoor peril as a general category. I asked whether or not the way this is written, the severe condition peril would actually be banned in 2025. Unintentionally, obviously.
Yeah,
I suppose it wouldn't hurt to say clothing, add that to the list. Clothing items intended for regular wear, formal wear does not include clothing items for exclusive use by the armed forces, PPE, or outdoor severe wet, and then we'll have to strike through it in 2028. But that is easy enough to do.
but if, okay. But if by 2028, it'll be,
By 2028, it will be included specifically.
but why wouldn't we just say that instead of, and then include it here? I'm trying to understand.
I think the concern is that by just omitting it and not referencing it, it could be pulled into the definition of apparel. So we would specifically exempt it and then remove the specific exemption and specifically include it in the list.
Or say it's not, or put it in the, with the apparel piece and say, extreme weather outdoor apparel is not included until 2028.
But we don't put the dates in
Okay,
the
in the
statute.
statute.
That's why we have to
Or
tier everything
reference the
this way.
section.
I think that would be more complicated.
It would.
Yeah.
I
think
I
this
don't
is
want
the
it to be
cleaner.
complicated at all with,
Okay.
when you have an exception for it, and then you've got a date later. It might look like our intent is to exclude it, and that is not our intent at all. So if this language is consistent with California, I think we should keep it. Yeah. And
Okay, let me add it. Oops. Equipment.
because that would be contradictory, and then all you do, what would happen is, so somebody would just change the date or say, we don't need this date in here for the outdoor apparel, and that's not what we want. Extreme weather. I think it's.
It's an easy fix. I can do it now, but it will take me a couple minutes to have a new draft for you.
Okay,
So I don't know if you want to just pause and go offline and I can get you a new draft, or if you want to move on to a different topic that I don't have
so
to.
I think
Focus
while
on.
it's fresh in your mind, we
Yeah.
might pause for a few minutes.
Okay, great.
And then we'll come back to S56. And so, yeah. What is the final resolution then on the question that we were just discussing from your
Okay.
perspective?
I'm going to put it right now in the carve out, the exempt of the clothing items intended for regular wear shall not include. So it will be one of the items listed. And then in 2028, we will strike through that language and add outdoor apparel for severe wet conditions to the list of items included as apparel at that time. So it will no longer be exempted at that time.
Okay, and that's in the bill.
It will be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay, but I just want to be very clear that our intent is not at all to exclude extreme weather outdoor apparel.
Well, it will be for the first 3 years.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
okay.
it's a
Just
grandfather.
checking.
But going forward, it's going to be included. And so
Yes.
I'm concerned that someone might misconstrue the language to think that our intent is to exclude it. Yeah.
It'll be double drafted so that there'll be, right?
Yes.
There'll be a section
It
that
will be, I
excludes it and then
understand.
a section that includes it, just for,
For that period of time, that's
Yeah.
fine, but you know what, going forward, I don't want anyone in the other side of this building thinking that we had an intent of permanently excluding extreme weather outdoor apparel, because we don't have that intent. And I'm being very clear now on the record that that's not our intent. Do we have to put that into our draft? I mean,
I think-
you know,
I think
there are
it'll
no
be
rules
clear.
being written, so we'll probably.
I think it'll be clear. This is the way that we always have
Make
to
it
draft things
very
with multiple, I mean, there are things in S56 that do the same thing, that have a later effective date.
We'll see. And how it fits with what California has done.
Thank you, Senator Weeks.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we discuss a little bit?
Yeah.
And
here we
or do
are.
a straw poll before we go to a vote? or-
Yeah. You mean on this particular thing?
Yeah, well, Katie's doing the final draft.
Yeah,
Okay. I was just gonna suggest that we use this time wisely to talk about it.
go ahead.
All I have to say is I'm glad that we made a carve out for the extreme weather till 2028,
Yeah,
because I think that's important. I also just want to say I look forward to the day when more women are heads of companies, because so many of these products adversely harm women. They go on and in women's bodies, and I look forward to that day. May it come
Okay.
soon.
good. I know the cosmetics and menstrual products for sure,
Yeah,
but you also understand that some of the products that darken men's hair have lead in it. Have lead, yeah, so that's not cool. And so,
I am checking my labels very
Yeah.
frequently now. I
and
think I
phthalates go down the drain
Yeah.
when you shampoo your hair, whether you're, regardless who you are, but yeah. So, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I'll be
Lot of
voting
cosmetics.
yes on this, by the way, just put that out there.
Okay. Right, so, Alex, I think what we'll do, does anyone else want to ask a question or comment? Let's go offline